The Africa Twin Adventure Sports has undergone quite a personality change for 2024, with Honda focusing the bike more on long-distance road touring than trail riding action. So, is this the grown-up, mature adventure sports we've all been waiting for? Or has Honda taken this beast of an adventure bike and made it a little bit dull and boring? I've travelled to sunny Portugal to find out.
In this video, I'll tell you everything you need to know from attending the bike's international press launch. And at the end, I'll answer these questions. Is this the best version of the Africa Twin yet? And is it the big adventure bike to spend your money on in 2024?
Honda have released a new version for 2024. And after talking to its customers, it's realised that the Adventure Sports is mainly used for road touring. So it's made a series of changes to make it easier and more capable on those long distance tours down French toll roads and up into the Alps. So let's take a look at some of those changes. The headline change for 2024 has been this smaller 19-inch front wheel as compared to a 21-incher for last year's model. Now you might think, is that going to make much difference? Well, after riding the bike all day today, it really does. That, along with less suspension travel, it's 20 millimeters less at the front and rear, it's 210 at the front, 200 at the rear. We have less ground clearance and a lower center of gravity, which all combines to make the bike feel a little bit more sport toury. Now don't get me wrong, this is still an adventure bike with a nice upright seating position, but it feels far more suited to riding through the twisties. And I think perhaps the biggest takeaway is it turns into corners a lot more sharply. It feels more agile, it holds a line better. And I admit, if I was heading off with a full set of luggage and a pillion, I think I would be far more comfortable on this version of the bike, particularly when it comes to low speed maneuvers, because another result of all those changes, it's lower to the ground. You can get your feet down far more easily. And that's a great thing when you've got a lot of luggage and someone on the back. The engine inside the 2024 Africa Twin Adventure Sports remains the same parallel twin found in last year's model. Peak power is still 100 brake horsepower, but peak torque has been increased by 7% to 112 Newton meters of torque, which comes in 750 RPM earlier at 5,500 RPM. Now, what's the result in the real world for all these numbers? Well, it means that Honda's taken what was already a nice low-end, grunty, nice torquey engine and just enhanced it. The thing really does tractor up steep inclines. There's lots and lots of grunt in the mid-range, which is perfect for a bike like this that spends most of its time in those areas. Not many people buy an Africa Twin to wring it out, and that engine remains an absolute peach. It's the standout feature of the Africa Twin, and I think its biggest selling point. Now, if you look at the stats compared to various other bikes, yes, the Africa Twin is down on power. I think the GS now breaks 140 plus. Ignore those stats, it does not matter. It's the way the engine delivers that power that matters.
And Honda's engineers have got it spot on.
If you're going to tell the world that you're focusing a bike on long distance road touring, it's got to be comfortable. If it's not comfortable, then there's no point in buying the bike.
The seating position does sit you a little further forward than on the previous model, but it still delivers a roomy, upright adventure bike stance. And for 2024, Honda has also redesigned the seat, adding 15 millimeters worth of cushioning. This all combines to help take some pressure off your backside. And while the Adventure Sports still doesn't have the most comfortable of perches, there is a noticeable improvement in rider comfort.
Up front, we have a nice large screen which you can change its position, and it does a very good job. Honda again have tweaked it for this year. They said they've tried to kind of keep the airflow off the rider more. Now on a day like today, the sun's shining, the sky's blue, I was actually thankful for a bit of airflow, so I had it in the down position a lot. But when I did have it up, there was a decent amount of weather protection. Something that is really frustrating though is that you need two hands to adjust it, so you can't adjust it on the go. It really is a silly little thing that could really enhance long distance touring. Now, as standard this year on the Adventure Sports model, you get Showa's era electronic suspension. The suspension adapts automatically to the way you ride, the road surface, and it does a superb job. The idea behind it is that the faster you ride, the firmer it gets, so that as you're pushing it in the twisties, you don't find yourself wallowing. And it really is a great piece of technology. It works seamlessly with the bike's handling. And I think the biggest compliment I can give it is I didn't really notice it.
Refocusing the Adventure Sports for road touring can't help but compromise its capability on the trails. And yes, a smaller front wheel and less ground clearance does take away from its effectiveness. But let's be honest, how many people buy one of these bikes to rip it up in the dirt on a regular basis? Now, most riders' skill will run out way before the Adventure Sports does. And for those of you who want to dabble in the trails, there is a suite of electronics courtesy of the off-road and gravel rider modes. The standing position felt natural and comfortable, the engine was a talky delight, and the bike ate up the dirt road we covered without breaking a sweat. But if you're serious about ripping it up on an Africa Twin, the standard bike would make for a better choice.
As ever with the Adventure Sports, there are two options available. One with a manual clutch and one with DCT dual clutch transmission, which is basically an automatic gearbox. The biggest surprise for me today is that I loved the DCT version. I think actually it would be my preferred choice now. Now the system has been enhanced and tweaked over the years. It's been improved for this year's Adventure Sports, and it seems to now those gear changes are a lot better than it did in the past, particularly in sport mode. When you hustle this bike along, it holds the gears for longer and it gives you really good crisp gear changes. I think it's a really fantastic piece of kit that I think Honda are improving with each new iteration, and I think this is the best one yet. Now, something else that Africa Twins come equipped with, which I think is a fantastic addition, is the ability to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. And if you haven't come across these before, they basically mirror your phone on the big TFT display. You can have something like Google Maps appear on the big screen, so you don't need a separate sat-nav device.
The bike's display remains the same as last year's model, and while it's not the most attractive dash you'll find, it's clearly laid out and easy to read. It's accessed by the left-hand switchgear and its cluster of countless buttons, which takes a bit of getting used to. Once you have, you can tinker with any number of settings, including suspension and traction control. And you can also select the various rider modes, which includes Tour, Urban, Gravel, Off-Road, plus a couple of user modes to make your own.
Now the bike costs just over £17,000. That's a lot of money for a motorcycle in anyone's book. It is cheaper than premium versions of the GS and the Multistrada, but it's a big chunk of change. For that money, there's a couple of things I would like to see on it. And we have no option for radar adaptive cruise control, no blind spot indicators, and it does feel that when it comes to technology, the Africa Twin is still lagging behind a little bit, despite the fact you have that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto option. And for a long distance touring bike, there will be those of you who just want to have a shaft drive. This is a chain drive bike. It's a matter of personal preference. If you don't mind lubing a chain, changing sprockets, then it won't be an issue. If you're beyond that, if you've passed that and you just want the hassle-free experience of a shaft drive, then that will discount the Africa Twin. It has been an incredible day here in southern Portugal, riding the new Africa Twin Adventure Sports. I'm lucky enough to go on a fair few of these new bike launches, and I have to admit this has been one of the most enjoyable. Now, I'm not going to lie, the great roads and the great weather and the great hospitality of the Portuguese is always going to factor into that. But the most important factor, I think, is the fact that this is a fantastic adventure bike. What Honda have done is they've taken a machine that was already incredibly capable and refined it, enhanced it, and I think made it more suitable for what most people will want to do with an Africa Twin adventure sports. Africa Twin has grown up, it's matured, it's been refined, and for me, it's the Africa Twin adventure sports I've been waiting for all along. And if you do want to blast on the trails, well, there's always the standard version. Now that is a seriously capable off-road machine. All good? Yeah?